My name is Lennox Whitmore, and I'm 31. The text came in at 11:51 p.m. on a Tuesday, while I was still at my desk in Chicago. Vendor contract open. Tea going cold beside my keyboard. I keep late hours. Not because I'm a workaholic, but because after 10 p.m., the world finally gets quiet enough for me to think clearly. That night felt ordinary until my phone lit up with my sister's name. Serafina Lennox. The guest list is finalized. Tristan's family moves in very specific social circles, and we want the day to feel seamless. I think it's better if you stay in Chicago. You understand, don't you? Love you. I read it twice, slowly, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't misreading the tone. I wasn't. That message was careful in the way only deliberate messages are careful. Every word chosen, nothing accidental. You understand, don't you? Was not a question. It was an instruction wearing the clothes of a question. I didn't cry. That's not a point of pride. I just didn't. Because what I felt wasn't sadness. It was recognition. The specific ache of something you suspected for a long time finally being confirmed. I typed back, I understand. Take care of yourselves. And hit send. Then I finished my tea even though it had gone cold. Because wasting a full mug felt like one more unnecessary loss on top of another. Here's the part you need to know for this story to make sense. I run a crisis management firm. A real one. Not social media cleanup. Not reputation fluff. When a corporation has a breach. When a public figure's private life becomes a public disaster. When a situation is already on fire and the only question is how much burns. People call me. I'm good at it because I learned early that staying calm while everything collapses is a skill. And in my family, everything was always about to collapse. My mother, Genevieve, isn't cruel in the simple way. She's complicated. She's always angled toward the future, toward the next thing that might fix everything. The right address, the right connections, the right marriage for her younger daughter. Serafina was always the one she looked at that way. She is 4 years younger than me, bright in a room the way some people are, the kind of charm that makes strangers lean closer. I loved her, genuinely. For a long time, that love and our family's imbalance existed at the same time without exploding. The friction came when Serafina started making choices that threatened to undo everything, and someone had to quietly make those choices disappear. That someone was always me. The first time was when she was 22. An incident involving a car, a parking lot, and a blood alcohol level that had no business being behind a wheel. It didn't make the news because I knew someone who knew someone. And I spent 3 weeks and more money than I like to admit making sure it stayed quiet. Serafina thanked me. My mother thanked me. Then we moved on like it never happened. The second time was a relationship. A man who had a wife. And a lawyer who was very interested in making that fact public. I handled it again. I called in favors I had been accumulating for years. I contained the damage before it spread. Each time I told myself I was doing it because I loved her. That was true. But looking back, I also made myself indispensable in a way that felt like love and functioned like a role. I couldn't fix the parts of my family that hurt, but I could fix the consequences. I could be useful, and being useful felt, for a long time, like belonging. Then Serafina met Tristan Calloway, the youngest son of Senator Graham Calloway. The Calloways were old money, political dynasty, the kind of family that expects its members to be spotless. Serafina's history needed management before she could step into that world without incident. She asked me to help. I said yes. For the next 3 years, I became the invisible infrastructure of her life. I softened her public image. I arranged charitable appearances. I handled vendors, logistics, and quiet cleanups. I spent $50, 000 of my own money to secure the Bitterroot Valley estate in Montana. Because it was the venue she wanted, and someone needed to guarantee the contract immediately. That someone was me. I knew every moving part of that wedding because I built every moving part of that wedding. That's what the 11:51 p.m. text was dismissing. Not just a sister. A person who had been holding the entire structure up. That night, after I answered her politely, I did what I always do when I need to think. I worked. I opened the iCloud sync on Serafina's planning tablet, the one I'd configured months earlier to keep vendor communications from falling through cracks. I need to be straightforward here. Reading her personal messages was a boundary I crossed. I knew it. I did it anyway. And what I found changed the shape of the next day. Serafina was messaging Daniel, an ex-boyfriend the family considered a mistake. Not because he was dangerous, but because he made her reckless in a way I'd spent years smoothing out. The messages weren't ambiguous. They had that warm, resumed intimacy of something that never really ended. She was asking him to come to the estate. Not after the wedding. Not later. The afternoon of the ceremony. She wanted him in the private ready room in the hour before she walked down the aisle. I sat very still, because I felt two things at once. One was sadness, the kind you feel when you love someone and can see they're about to hurt themselves. The other was something smaller and less flattering, the awareness that she was about to blow up a wedding I had built, after telling me I wasn't welcome to attend it. And that's when I stopped fixing. Not in a dramatic way, not in a screaming way, in a quiet, deliberate way. That morning, I called the head of the catering firm and told him there was a suspected gas leak at the Bitterroot property. That was a lie, and I'm not dressing it up. I told him, for safety reasons. I was redirecting all services to a secondary location. It worked because I held the contracts, and vendors follow authority. By midday, the food, the wine, and a large portion of staff were rerouted to a private charter I arranged on the lake. Then I made one more call, to a political correspondent I'd worked with before. Careful, experienced, the kind of journalist who doesn't need much to start moving in the direction of a story. I didn't fabricate anything. I told him where to be and when. I told him what I believed he would find. He understood, and he was there by 3. I didn't warn Serafina. I didn't warn my mother. That's the choice that sits in my chest when I remember this story. Not the logistics. Not the journalist. Just that moment of knowing and choosing silence. I don't know if it was self-protection or something harder to justify. Probably both. There's another piece you need to understand. Because this is where the mess becomes a domino line. The Callaway attorneys drafted a detailed prenuptial agreement. Buried inside it was an infidelity and reputation clause. If the marriage was dissolved before or immediately following the ceremony due to documented misconduct by the bride, financial liability for wedding-related costs reverted to the primary guarantor of the estate contract. That guarantor was not me. It was my mother, Genevieve. She countersigned months earlier because Serafina's credit didn't qualify a loan and because Genevieve wanted her name on the document. I had flagged the clause to her at the time. She waved it off. "It's a formality," she said. "Nothing is going to go wrong." I didn't create that clause. I didn't engineer my mother's involvement, but I knew it existed. And that morning, I chose not to remind anyone. By 0 p.m. The Bitterroot estate went quiet in the particular way. Large places go quiet when what was supposed to fill them doesn't arrive. Guest tables were bare. Staff was gone. People moved through rooms with strained politeness, trying to interpret an absence. The Callaways, accustomed to events running exactly as planned, had the stillness of people who were furious and not yet showing it. Tristan found out through his phone, the way most people find out things now. A link forwarded from someone in his circle. A story already in motion before he could shape it. I watched part of it through the estate security feed. That felt wrong even as I did it. Because there's something uncomfortable about observing genuine devastation from a distance. Even when you helped set the stage. Tristan handled it like someone raised in public life. He walked into the empty chapel, spoke briefly to the guests, said the wedding would not proceed, apologized for their time, said his family would be in touch. And then he left. No shouting, no pleading, just control. The legal team moved quickly. By evening, formal proceedings were initiated. The clause was invoked. And my mother's name was on everything. If you were me, after being uninvited, would you warn them anyway? Or let the day play out? Comment. Warn or let it burn. My mother called me again and again that night. When I finally answered, her voice wasn't the confident voice that texted me about seamless and social circles. It was jagged, breathless, frightened. She had been crying for hours. "Lennox," she said, "I need you to fix this." Of course she did. I always fixed it. That was the function I built myself into. She said she knew I could fix it, that I was good at this, that we were family, that Serafina made a mistake, that the Callaways were overreacting, that the numbers were impossible, that she couldn't handle it. I sat with the phone against my ear and looked out at the lake, the water black and steady under the city lights. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt tired. The specific tiredness of someone who has been bracing for years and has finally stopped. "I can't fix this one." "Mom," I said. She went quiet for a beat. Then her panic turned into accusation. She called me cold. She said I didn't care about my family. She said I did this to them on purpose. I let her say it. Some of it landed. Some of it didn't. "I love you," I told her, and I meant it. "I'm not going to help this time." I stayed on the line a few more minutes without saying much else. Then we said goodbye and I hung up. The months after were quieter than I expected. My mother bore the liability under the terms she had agreed to. The family home in Chicago, already leveraged against debts, was repossessed. That house had been close to that edge before. I had quietly prevented it twice. With my own money. This time, I didn't step in. I want to be honest about that. Because it cost me something. I grew up in that house. It had a particular smell in the mornings. Old wood and coffee. And something I could never name. It's gone now. And I was part of the chain of events that made it possible. I don't know how to carry that in a neat way. I just carry it. Serafina disappeared. I don't know exactly where. We haven't spoken. I've started messages to her and deleted them. I'm not proud of that. I'm also not ready to pretend it's simple. People like to tell stories like this as if there's a clean villain and a clean hero. The truth is messier. I didn't handle everything perfectly. I crossed a boundary reading those messages. I made calls that set real consequences in motion. I caused harm to people I love. Even if they had harmed me too. Both things are true and they don't cancel each other out. But here's what I learned on the other side. I spent a long time being useful to people who loved me more for what I did than for who I was. That's partly on them. It's also partly on me. Because I made myself into a function. And functions are easy to take for granted. I stayed longer than I should have because I confused being needed with being loved. I kept believing that, if I did enough, the equation would eventually balance. It doesn't work that way. My life now is quieter and, in most of the ways that matter, better. I moved into an office with good light and a window that faces the lake. I took on new clients. Real work. The kind I'm built for. I have a small circle of people who know me outside my professional role. My lead investigator, Marcus, who tells me the truth without making it feel like a verdict. A mentor in New York, Patricia, who asks the uncomfortable questions that actually move me forward. A few friends from the years when I had nothing and was figuring everything out, who never needed me to be impressive. They see me as a person. That sounds small. It isn't. Some mornings I sit with coffee and watch the light change over the water, and I think about my mother and my sister. I feel a kind of open sadness. Not suffocating. Just present. I hope they're okay. I mean that without subtext. I'm not the person I was 3 years ago. Not even the person I was last year. I'm still finding out who I am outside of being the one who fixes everything. And that process takes longer than you think. For a long time, my name felt like a job description. The fixer. The calmer. The one who pays. Who calls. Who smooths. Who disappears so someone else can shine. Now, my name feels like mine again. Not because everything ended well, but because I finally stopped setting myself on fire to keep someone else warm. If this story hit you, subscribe and turn on notifications. More real story times are coming.